So, I'd like to declare this public hearing open. We have delayed it because we're waiting for copies of the ordinances we're considering. And, we have copies of the floodplain management ordinance. And I don't believe we asked if anybody wanted any, nobody wanted any. This is an ordinance that we as a town must adopt if we want FEMA money. So if our roads wash out and we don't have this ordinance, FEMA says tough. So it's sort of the federal government's playing a gun to our heads and saying we got to do this. And so, are there any questions?
Well, we're just concerned that the Saco River covered so much of, the Saco River corridor covered so much of the same situation.
Yes.
But we still have to go through, so now we know why.
We still have to, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and our concern is that our house is over 100 years old. And if it was substantially damaged, we might financially be able to fix it. But financially, we would not be able to elevate this house. And in addition, we don't even think that physically the house would be able to be elevated above the flood level. So we think that there should be exemptions to this. It's not fair to us who have owned this house for generations that if we weren't able to elevate it, then what would we be able to do? If we weren't be able to financially elevate it, because it's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars.
I sympathize with you, but I have to tell you that the argument isn't with us. The argument is with the federal government.
But as a town, can we exempt people, or can we be lenient on some that, like houses over 75 years?
Well, first of all, you can't get flood insurance without this passing verbatim. Don't change a comma. Don't change a capital letter to just don't change anything. That's what we're told.
Is that something new? Because we have been able to get it.
This is what I'm being told.
I mean, we have been able to get it in the past, but we don't because it's very expensive.
Yeah, it keeps going
so
up every year.
even though you may be doing this, we still could not afford flood insurance, so we don't have any.
I guess I'm not totally sure I understand. So if we pass this, how do you think it will, if the town passes it, how do you think it will impact your property?
If our property is substantially damaged, and I don't know if it has to be damaged by flood or by fire, and we have to get a permit through you people, through the CEO, and we would be required to elevate our house above flood level because we're in the AE zone.
Okay.
And the house is more than 100 years old.
And we would
It's
not
on a granite foundation.
No, it's not on a
Well, it's not.
foundation.
That speaks very well for its survivability.
Well, yeah, it's the only house that has escaped the flood of 1936 on
Yeah.
Saco River, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen again. I mean, the floors.
It has been flooded several times, but we would not be able to elevate this house. And number one, it would cost, we wouldn't be able to afford it. And more importantly, physically, we don't think it would be able to be raised because it's so old.
I think that's kind of the point of what the federal government and the state government are trying to do is the houses that are in a high vulnerability area that they designate by the different zones, that they're saying we, the government, don't want people building houses in those areas unless they're built a particular way. Elevate, I guess, is what you're saying. So I think that's the whole purpose of it, and it's not certainly not passed because of you, but sounds like you're one of the people who would be impacted by it. So I don't think we could exempt you because the whole purpose is not to have houses in those places without being built a certain way.
But what about the historic value of it? You've talked about historic value in your, ordinance. What does that allow us to do?
Under that, and I have to read, I
It
think,
doesn't matter to the federal
I mean,
government.
it says we can get a variance, something about a variance,
under
and
that,
what kind of a variance can we get? Are we gonna get a variance that we can just rebuild the type of foundation we have, just glue it together? Or do we have to elevate the house, which will fall down, and, put a different foundation, a traditional, a newer type foundation? Well, these things need to be considered, I'm sorry, because there's been so many things for me in this town that have ended up costing us money. Like, we spent almost $20,000 trying to get whatever his name was, so that he couldn't build there. That's a lot of money to build a new foundation. I just think some of this planning has got to take into consideration the average Joe who lives here. And we work hard to pay our taxes.
And I can truly understand the reason why new houses need to be elevated. And if ours was totally destroyed, yeah, of course, we would elevate it. But if it was substantially destroyed, and we could probably pay to fix it, but we couldn't elevate it. So, we were just wondering how the town would help us out in that situation, which,
I don't think we
Who
will.
is the town helping by going forward with this FEMA?
So the town is helping everybody else in town, but not you.
But they're not on the floodplains, but,
Yeah,
yeah, but they're helping for the roads.
the road.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
It's a trade-off.
I wanna tell you, I fought bringing this forward, because I don't like it personally, but, what convinced me to stop opposing it was that FEMA will not reimburse us for anything if we don't pass this. And that's really the only reason I can see to pass it.
So who has paid for any, and I mean any in quotes, repairs on the river roads this past year? I mean, that's
Yeah,
a hole.
well, I mean, permit me to laugh, I understand,
Yeah,
I
I
own land on River Road, so I do understand what you're saying.
But, so who has paid for that?
But the two aren't connected. Like, I'm not sure, you're connecting the
Well,
two.
they are connected in that, the water that comes from the sky has caused damage on the river road, and there are houses on the river road that are located close to the river.
So what I would do is urge you to come to the special town meeting and argue against the passage of this, ordinance.
I'm sure it's gonna pass because of the road situation. I mean, it makes sense for that. But if there is anything that we could do to argue to be exempt, or it's,
Not that I know of, I mean, I'm apologetic, I don't know what to say, but I'm told we can't change any wording, nothing.
okay,
And we'll ask, I mean, we're working with the organization,
Southern Maine Regional Planning and Development.
the town's engaged them to help us with this ordinance. So we'll certainly pose the question to them and be able to answer that question more specifically at the town meeting.
So at the town meeting, will the ordinance be voted on?
Yes,
I mean, this is not the first meeting that we've
Yeah,
had.
we know
about
that,
this.
we're sorry we haven't been
yeah,
here
well,
before,
this is the first time that,
like attended.
okay, so you could, so
You've got,
with this planning, with this planning you're going to, then you could ask for something like our situation to be helped. How could they help us?
I think the way it would come down, because of the procedure is, if the question is asked at the town meeting, we should have the answer. And if the answer is yes, we could exempt a 100-year-old house or a 75-year-old house or whatever, then we would say that at the town meeting.
Oh, okay,
And that presumably would factor into whether people voted up or down. But at this juncture, we can't change it because it has to go to the town. The next step is this verbatim has to go to the town. But, that may be a critical piece of information for people to vote on, and if they vote no, then, we wouldn't be covered for a period of time, is my understanding.
How many dirt roads are there that will be affected by this? Well, I suppose too, a paved road also could be affected.
All of them in town, all of them.
Whatever money we try to get from FEMA.
Okay, she has a question, Donna. Something.
Well, I have a question, is when you pass this and you're covering the town roads, is there an option that if this is passed, that they will be able to apply for FEMA funds to assist with the repair of their homes?
I don't think so, but I'm not positive. We will ask about that. We will see that we cover that.
I don't know if that would be connected, or if there was some other way that they could get maybe FEMA money instead of insurance money or what have you.
Sure. Yep, I will ask.
That's a good point.
I will ask.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions about the floodplain management ordinance? Okay, moving right along.
Well, wait, one other question. If we submit a series of questions for members of the planning board or whatever you represent, would that be possible based on what our questions from reading this?
So if you were to get that to me within a week, then
Oh,
there
that
would
could
be
be
time for
Okay,
them to reply. Sure, why not?
okay, thank
Why
you.
not? Yeah.
Do we have a map that shows the flood zones in Baldwin?
Yes, we do, in the selectman's office. There are floodplain maps. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, the medical and adult use cannabis ordinance will go there because, we're still making copies of the land use ordinance for all of you, and,
If you have a land use, did you get a copy of it?
so,
No?
do we have any questions on the, cannabis ordinance? Carol? I'm so surprised.
At the last meeting, we went over a whole bunch of different stuff, and I don't see where any of it was incorporated. Is there a reason why?
Because we thought this was good enough, this was what we wanted. This is what the planning board recommends. This is, as you read it, you will see our references to state statutes.
Mm-hmm.
This is as, prohibitive of marijuana, as we can be, as the state will allow us to be. And that is what we did. That is the direction we felt we were being given by the town, and that we asked Southern Maine Regional Planning and Development Commission to do for us. They wrote the ordinance and, made it as prohibitive as we could make it. So, in terms of comments made, we took them into account and said, this is it. You can't make it any more prohibitive than this.
What about the 5,000 square foot? That's an option that we have. I think there are some options in here that we have.
So, let me know what you're talking about.
When you talk about existing permits, existing licenses,
Yeah?
you go through all the restrictions on it. But yet, I mean, one of the things that we had control over was the size of the plants and everything like that, and you still got 5,000 square feet. You still got one, manufacturing per lot. You have.
So, show me, tell me what page or what, section, you're specifically referring to. Because I don't know, I did not memorize my way around the ordinance.
We're talking medical or adult?
Number 11 on page 10, I don't know,
Hang on.
I printed this one also.
I don't know where's my glasses. I'll try.
I think it starts on page 6 is what she's talking about.
Yeah, page 5. Number 1, it says limitations on density existing medical use cannabis establishment.
All right, give us a second to get that. Page 6,
Page 5,
Page five,
What
number
number?
1,
I-1.
I-1.
Now it says medical use cannabis establishment operated for commercial use is permitted per lot. I thought we had talked about 1 per town. Number 1, it's actually the last 2 words in that paragraph.
Per lot, yep, I got it. Okay, I will ask about that. Yep.
The other thing we have is, I don't know, but I don't remember what we had talked about for distances, but they didn't seem to concern me. And then it also goes on to limitation of size and existing
Wait,
use.
where are we?
I'm sorry, next page, page 6, number 3.
Number 3, yep.
Now, let me, wait a minute, I got a reference back. As it says, without approval, at one space, we actually say that there is no, it's not allowed to combine caregivers, so you would have, caregiver, cultivation, then you have 500 square foot that's allowed, and then you go into existing, and you're allowing 2 on page 6. Number 3,
I don't know if we have, 2 that are combined. We are not allowed to know what's going on. But I have called the state office that supervises the.
but this is saying if they have an existing permit, and then they have to come in and apply for a conditional use. When they apply for that conditional use, we're going to allow 2 or more caregivers to be operating together.
So if they're already operating together, that's one thing. We don't know. We don't know what's going on in this town because the state won't tell us.
Why would we want to state 2 though? Why wouldn't we want to state 1 and just say, this is what we're gonna allow? And then if they do what they do,
Because it's very hard to take somebody's property away from them.
you're not
And
taking.
what you're
property.
advocating would be taking somebody's property away from them.
I'm saying that they can have 1 caregiver's person on that property.
But I don't know what the story is here, because I'm not allowed to know.
And then it goes on in that same paragraph, it says total of all areas cannabis-related activity may not exceed 5,000 square feet. And I thought we had lowered that down to 2,000.
I will see if we can do that. I've got no problem with that idea.
Where's the 500, Carol?
So it's a definition of the caregivers as to what they can do. They can have a maximum of 500 square feet. It was
Where is that?
Where?
planning. That's in the definitions, I believe.
Under what name?
What number, what name?
Land use.
Thank you.
There's too many highlights in here.
I'll be right back with more.
Oh, it's in J. Hang on a sec. Oh, it's in J. And it's J. It's J1II. It's 500 square feet for planning
So is that on page 13?
Yes, that's on page 13.
Okay, II up at the top, it's the last, page there.
Which I believe the 500 square feet is what I've read in state law. And up to 1,000 square feet canopy. But we're saying they can only have one of those in this paragraph. And then you go back to the existing, and you're stating that they can have two of those combined.
So they can cultivate up to 500 square feet, or up to 1,000 feet of
Square feet of canopy, which actually applies to any turf plant.
So that's cultivation, and then this refers to the size of the facility. So it's two different things.
And then, okay, right. But the size of the facility, I thought we just stated 2,000. That's different now. And then we have J, that determines the two or more caregivers for a commercial, as outlined, is allowed in existing.
So J
But then-
regulates home cultivation for medical and adult use, right?
Right.
And then what was the other thing you were talking about?
The limitations on sizing and existing. It allows where two or more caregivers can operate. And it's,
So you're back to number 3,
yeah, back to number 3 on page 6.
and you're comparing it to J?
Yes.
So they're different operations, aren't they? One's a cannabis establishment, the other one's a home use.
One is cultivation for medical and adult use cannabis. The other is the size of existing medical use cannabis
Why
establishments,
would we not use the same guidelines?
because the state law changes.
I thought we had control of that.
So we can check, it does limit it to one up top, cannabis establishment. One establishment, I think she said 2 caregivers can separate it out. I don't remember if the 5,000 was state law, if that was discretionary, I can't remember.
5,000 is outside discretion.
Yeah.
So I will ask about that.
Trying to make it even more prescriptive.
Damn right. I don't want it. Can you tell? I don't want any of the other children.
So that 5,000 you think is, might need to be 2,000.
Right.
Yeah, and if that's the only issue, I mean, it's like 30 other people, but if that's the only issue, maybe what we look at is passing this, because there's a whole lot of other restrictions involved here that do restrict, and then look at amending it,
I wanna make sure that if it's an existing place, that we have dates put in place, that we say, okay, if the permit is existing, or if the license is existing, it has to exist before we started this process.
it would be, I think it'd be as a ratification, so whenever the town approved it. Like, that's a legal question, that's not for us.
And then why wouldn't we put, something in here stating that any licensing had to be issued for Baldwin?
What do you mean?
When you issue a license, like, you have people that are trying to build here that have licenses elsewhere and have other operations in the state.
That's a license issue, if they have a license, they have a license.
But do they have that license? Does that apply to here if they haven't applied for all the right things?
Well, it's two different things. I mean, if they have the license, then they can do the other stuff. So, if they haven't got the conditional use permit, they're not allowed under our ordinance to do it.
Okay.
So it just depends on which which, thing you're looking at, like the building permit, then that would be Baldwin. If it's a conditional use permit, that would be Baldwin. If it's a license to operate under state law, that's state. And I don't think
They
it's,
can still get a license, but they don't operate here within the town. We can
from
still,
who are they getting a license from?
from the state.
They can get a license from the state and operate in Biddeford.
Fine, but I just don't want them to say, okay, well, we've had our license all along, we wanna come into Baldwin, and we have to say, wait a minute here.
They have to get a license for Baldwin, I believe.
They would have to get a permit for Baldwin for all these.
Let's look at what exists, there's a difference.
So the question is a separate state permit needed for each site operated?
Yeah, because I don't want them to come in here and say, hey, I'm an existing licensee, and so now I can apply as an existing person for a CUP from us.
Yeah, okay, understand.
So, and that license should not give them rights to go through the existing process here as.
Yeah, I don't think that's what I mean, I think it's pretty clear in page 4 or 5, it talks about medical use cannabis establishments existing, underlined, bold, prior to the adoption of this ordinance, including all registered dispensaries, facilities, cultivation, manufacturing, production, operation, must seek approval from the planning board. So existing means it's already in town.
Existing prior to the adoption,
In
okay.
town.
In town. Now, prior to the adoption, what's the adoption date?
When's the town meeting?
When the town meeting happens, right now, it would be the 24th of September.
If it
So
happens.
at one point, I was under the impression that we could backdate that back to when we started this process.
That's a
That's a
separate,
legal issue.
that's a
Yeah.
separate thing. That's not something we don't control. We're just talking about this ordinance.
I'm pretty sure it's when we pass it, but maybe the lawyers say it's earlier.
Yeah, I was under the impression that they could be back to last September.
That's a legal issue that I think is actually being.
We got more coming.
Right now. All right.
Okay.
So it sounds like the only real thing that we need to look at is that 2,000, 5,000.
Okay, is that okay?
5,000, two things together, so 5,000.
Yep, we'll have a conversation about that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So is it your contention or understanding that, you know, I listened to Carol, she made some nice points, as far as the existing, cultivation, the people we don't know about, are you telling me the state says if these people come out of the woodwork, we have to allow them a facility?
what they're doing already.
What they're doing
That's how I
already.
read this. That's how I read this. We
They
have
can
to
do what they
allow,
were doing already out of their own, but now we're offering them
we're not offering them anything.
a 5,000 square foot.
No, we're not offering them any
Okay.
expansion of any kind. But on the other hand, we can't know what they're doing.
Right.
The state knows what they're doing, but we don't.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, if we know there's none in town, or we have the assumption there's none in town,
I don't assume that, you know.
then why can't we expressly prohibit, like we did the adult use, and omit all the stipulations involved, if we're not gonna allow them to put in a facility?
We don't know.
Yeah. You don't know.
We don't know. I called the state, I asked them, I identified myself as chair of the planning board. I mean, you know, I wanna know what's going on in town, we wanna know, the town does. They said, we can't tell you.
But that's kind of irrelevant to what I'm saying, because we don't care if we know, it's just that now that when they do come out, we're allowing them all the rest of them stipulations.
protected by state law.
And I don't think we're allowing them to expand their use. I think we're saying they get to do what they're doing now.
That's what I wondered, the interpretation that you guys have, because, like I told Joe before, I'm not a lawyer, it's just the whole wording of it doesn't sit quite right with me, because,
So you and I are local control guys, you know, I mean, we appreciate that. I appreciate it a lot, but the state is trying to take that away from the towns, you know, this is the
right,
only.
and they can have all the caregivers they want, in the time that this has taken, I could have applied for a caregiver license.
Yeah,
Literally, you can do it by email, do a couple forms, background check, you send them a check, and now you got a caregiver's license.
yeah,
After this, I can come to you for the planning board, for a permit to have a 2,000 if we change it, or 5,000 square foot facility, that just doesn't seem like it's right, from what I understood about the cannabis ordinance passed back in 2018.
yeah,
Because we never did anything about it, so now we're finally doing something about it, thank God nothing's come up in the interim,
yeah,
so we had to, but now it has, so. From what I understand, anything after 2018 that we haven't passed is almost moot, we can do what we want. So I don't understand the state law, I'm not a lawyer, but,
Well, we asked the people we were working with, after we had some public input, we said, create the most restrictive ordinance that you could create under state law.
SMPDC, right?
yeah,
SMPDC, right?
Well, I mean, we hired them, Mike, you
Yeah, I understand that, but they're not lawyers, and they're kinda like, to me, almost an extension of the state, they tell us how to comply rather than,
Well, if we had some,
how to
yeah,
fight for the town. I know
it's
it's a
who we
voted
have,
in.
it's who we have, you know,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so,
But we can question them.
and we've had tons of meetings on this, so you've been in a lot of them. But, I mean, this is, I get your question, but, I mean, I'm only one of a couple on the board. My impression is if it's existing, we're not giving them the ability to expand, we're giving them the ability to continue, unless state law says they can expand, and then that's not on us, that's on the state.
Well, the cannabis was act of whatever, 2018, and once they changed it, it is what it is. The towns still have, as of today,
Not on medical,
Keep it all covered.
medical's a little bit less, we have a little less,
yeah, you have to allow caregivers, of course. Like,
Yeah.
you have to allow recreational, the guy that grows 12 plants out in his backyard, you have to allow that. I totally understand that, but when it comes to manufacturing facilities, I thought we had all the control over that. Versus somebody, you know. So basically what I said, you know, just, you can either say yes or no. If I went and got a caregiver's license before all this happened, when it all went through, passed as this, I can come to you for a 5,000 square foot facility. Correct?
I would say, you'd have to show that you already have that,
Or you have what?
the 5,000 square foot facility, like, I don't think we're allowing expansion of that use, but, you know, from my perspective, this is a ton of work, I mean, for.
Oh, 100%, I totally get,
This is a ton of work to get to here, and, we may not get it right the first time, perfectly right, but this is well, if this is what the town wants, this is way better than what we have today. You know, like, this is 50 steps forward, and if the 2,000 versus 5,000 is an issue the town wants to deal with, you know, we have town meetings, we have special town meetings, we can fix it. But like getting to this place, plateau here, and then figure out what the next step is, if it, you know, if we talk to the town lawyer and he says, I think it's, yeah, if he says, you know, this doesn't cover expansion, that they actually would get to do 5,000, then maybe we wanna come back and say, no expansion of existing use, and have it in there
yeah,
clear.
and it's just them little tweaks, I think, that takes the interpretation out of it. You know, you're sitting here, you're talking about, well, this is how I think it says. You know,
Exactly that.
And I totally appreciate all the work you guys have put into this, I understand it, I've watched it, you know, I know what,
Yeah.
just,
I just don't think we should vote it, I think that it would be, unfortunate if we voted this down, if this is what the town wants again, right? If this is what the town wants, it's unfortunate to vote this down because it's not perfect. You know, that's what I'm trying to do.
There, speaking of local control, there seem to be two important clauses in here that gives the town control over existing operations, both medical and recreational. Because, medical use cannabis establishments existing prior to the adoptive date of this ordinance, including all registered dispensaries, cannabis-related facilities, and/or cultivation, manufacturing, or medical use cannabis production, or operations of any type, must seek approval from the planning board to maintain operations as a conditional use. And then, for adult use, the existing, medical use, or the existing, recreational use, and I think that's supposed to be adult use, have 120 days, no, that's medical use.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so that's medical use. I can't see whether the same thing applies to.
I got one more left.
No, it doesn't, it says it's expressly
I mean,
prohibited,
I'll get you another one.
so there's no stipulation,
Yeah.
so.
So it's only the medical use that we.
I'll get you one, okay.
Okay.
Yes,
I guess my concern and not really understanding everything that's going on, I'm assuming we're talking about caregivers. I'm concerned about the property across from our church, the West Baldwin Church.
Yes,
I'm concerned about that facility.
One.
The distance that prohibits that type of facility to be put in our town.
it's my interpretation, the answer is yes.
So it is prohibited.
That's my understanding.
So that's what I'm
It
reading.
changed from 500 to 1,000 feet,
What is it?
the distance. The distance changed
I
from
understand.
500 to 1,000.
I don't even want it on the property, you know. So I just wanna make sure it's totally prohibited, any kind of cannabis retail store, manufacturing, or whatever would be allowed in Baldwin.
yeah, there'd be stuff that's allowed, yeah, absolutely. It's not, we can't 100% prohibit the growing of marijuana
In a facility that they would put on, that they would build on a property, that's what I understand is gonna happen.
But you're talking about that property in particular, you said all of Baldwin.
On that property.
So this wasn't created just for that property, first
No,
off.
I'm sure it was created for all properties. It included that.
And I think what Matt was saying was, there's a prohibition of, I'm trying to find it, a prohibition against, most, if not all, uses within 1,000 feet of a church. I think that's right, Matt, isn't it?
Yes.
And so if there's a property 1,000 feet from a church, they wouldn't be able to do it under this ordinance.
Okay, because what I'm reading is on the preamble that I printed off the website. And this says prohibition, you know, for adult cannabis establishments. It's prohibited all adult use cannabis establishments of every kind and type, including retail stores, cultivation facilities, etc. And I believe Matt read that. That it would pertain to that, to any kind of facility to be allowed with a permit or whatever, to establish that building. And then
bringing in the marijuana or cannabis, whatever they wanna, raise and make, and sell out, I'm assuming, if that's what they're doing, is gonna sell it. But I think what some of us wanna know is this gonna be totally prohibited, that we will not have something like that in our town, because it's gonna end up like the solar farms, you let one in, and we're gonna have a bunch more. Our town is gonna change totally with that kind of, those kind of facilities being allowed to exist.
We can't, totally prohibit marijuana growing in town.
I understand that.
So we do have on page 5, I-2, which says that no cannabis establishment shall be closer than 1,000 linear feet to any school, drug, or alcohol treatment facility, licensed daycare center, or other medical cannabis establishment, as measured in the straight line. That's one of the things that makes it difficult to.
But if it's a non-existing, is a non-existing one gonna be allowed in the town of Baldwin?
What I was looking at here, and I realized as I was reading it, it doesn't say church.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
And I think we were all thinking it said church.
Are you gonna put in church?
I'm gonna ask.
Okay, I'd like to bring up something. I'm jumping ahead to definitions in land use ordinance. Definition of church. The second sentence in that is troublesome. A building or structure or group of buildings or structures, the design primarily intended for and used for the conduct of religious services, etc. What the hell does the design contribute to that? It's on page 6 in the land use one. I'm concerned because if somebody wants to challenge the applicability of that word, they look at that and say, you guys didn't write a definition very well.
The is the word that needs to come out.
Okay, we'll get to that, but let's take that out so we don't look illiterate.
I don't know whether design is the right word or purpose.
That may be out of a state definition, I don't know, but it got mangulated.
Good catch on that.
I have minor in English.
Minor?
Well, is the absence of church, I think the author is in there, I'm not sure what's under there.
Yeah, I'm not even,
We can't put this to the town meeting if we change it.
yes, we can. We've done that before. We can alter it after a public hearing.
Yeah, that's why we have a public
That's why
hearing.
we have them.
We need something that we can certify as what you approved.
Yep.
Well, slow down. So if we, so you think we can change it from this?
And we have done that before. Back under the reign of Mr. Blake.
Okay, so then when do we have to approve it before you need it with the town meeting this time it is?
Well, I think we've got to approve it tonight.
I believe there's precedent for that in the past.
Yes.
And again, it's a minor change, and it does not substantially change the intent or effect. It just cleans up stuff.
Yep.
Other stuff.
I think that we could add the word church there without a major change of intent in this. And I like what you have been suggesting, David, and that you said pass this, let's get this on the books, and let's let time go by and find out what's going on.
Well, I'm trying to figure out if the church is big enough that we're gonna have to make that change.
Yes,
Should we say mosque and all the other designations? You might have to say a
House of worship.
house of, there you go, thank you.
you want house of worship?
But then we have to,
Register the word church.
Church.
then we have to get that into a definition.
Let's go with church. Let's go with
Okay.
church. Let's go.
Because then we can rely on the ordinance definition of church.
Yep.
How about church or house of worship?
I don't know what a house of worship is, that's the one.
Yeah, I suppose.
I mean, there's a lot of people who think their house is a house of worship.
That might come in more, often than you think, it's just.
There you go.
You know, if you put it in there as a house of worship, I'm gonna say, we worship in my house, so you can't be anywhere near me.
Yeah, there you go, we're gonna put up a sign, this is a house of worship.
If I could just give you where we stand. So we've got to, as the select board, we're gonna put something before the town, before the moratorium expires. We've got to do it, on the 24th or sometime during that week. So we need an ordinance that's approved by you folks for us to take to a town meeting, by Monday.
I think you will have it tonight, or you won't have it for a
So
while.
we need to sign, we are supposed to sign something and testify that this is what's gonna go in front of us
Yeah.
on the 24th.
Can I make a motion tonight to extend the moratorium again? I know I can.
Not for us though, I mean, this is not for our
But
meeting.
for the selectmen, I can.
So, all right, so we've got three issues. We've got the 2,000, 5,000.
Yep.
We've got the church, and we've got the expansion of an existing use.
2,000, 5,000.
What's that, is it? Just, I said three.
And that issue of one per town, lot, one per lot, one per town?
Well, it's already in there. There's one establishment per town, but there's two caregivers can be at one establishment.
Yeah, but there's another part that said per lot.
Per lot, I know you were
Per
saying.
lot, or was it supposed to be per town?
Should be per
It
town.
wasn't supposed to be per lot.
Okay, what, you gotta give me that one again. I never found that, so. The 500 per lot.
It's a matter of it being a medical cannabis, and personal cannabis.
Per lot was on page.
On page 5,
Page 5.
number 1, right?
I won.
Limitation of density of existing medical use cannabis establishment. Yeah, that's right. I think one per lot's right. That's a medical use. That's,
But I thought when we were discussing it, we were not supposed to per lot, but we only wanted one medical use cannabis thing per town, in town. We only wanted one. They started at 5 and they went right down to 1. And it wasn't per lot.
But it goes back to what I was saying, that it's permitted any caregiver to crawl out of the woodwork and apply for that 5,000 square foot facility for a lot,
I don't
that's
think
why.
we can do
And then this opened it up to everybody, not just one for the town.
Don, you're saying you remember it to be one per town? Because I don't.
I remember having this discussion with Harold Soros before we talked about it.
Actually, it wasn't, somebody else had.
Somebody was here, somebody else was talking about it.
Yeah, somebody else brought it up, because they didn't want any more than one. And then I just followed up based on it.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if we could do that. Like, that's medical, that's not.
But it's talking about an establishment, it's talking about a dispensary, which we didn't.
That's where the conversation
Yeah.
was, when we talked about dispensary, it was one per town. That was,
Right,
that was,
and
that.
then within the dispensary, we had the ability to cut off everything except cultivation. So that's your caregiver cultivation.
So a medical cannabis establishment is either cultivation, manufacturing, testing, registered dispensary, medical
Right.
retail store, cannabis counseling office.
David, I think it all stems around the dispensary, and when you have one per town.
If they had the existing thing, then we were only gonna allow one. But they had started off with like 5 or something like that, and then they agreed to go down to 1. It was per town, it was per town limit.
That's right. But it was the dispensary.
Yeah, and then within the dispensary, the manufacturing, testing, counseling, we had control over, we could limit that, but we couldn't limit the cultivation within the dispensary, except for being the 500 square feet.
Where's the 500 square feet?
That's the definition of a cultivation area.
But it's, not with medical,
You'll see it, it's mentioned throughout this anyway. It's 500 square feet for plant-based.
Give me one site.
There you go, I'll do it again.
I mean, I can only speak for myself, but without making sure Michaela blesses the per town versus per lot, I wouldn't go for it.
This is a carryover from our existing medical cannabis ordinance. Under performance standards in E, medical cannabis registered dispensary limit. There shall be no more than one medical cannabis registered dispensary in the town of Baldwin.
That's where I remember that.
Yeah, that's what's on the books now, as part of the land use
Right,
ordinance.
and then they came in with a new one to propose it, and they had upped it to 5, and everybody was like, no, we're gonna put one
Back
down
down to
to
one.
1. This is 500.
500 reference.
Okay, under, page 13, double I, it talks about, your plants, your count by plant, it's 500 square feet. If you're talking about a plant canopy, it's up to 1,000 square feet.
If the only reference to lot is under density limit, only one medical cannabis production facility shall be permitted per lot.
So the 500 square feet is a reference to the size of the cultivation plot.
Yes.
The 5,000 square feet is a reference to the size of the facility.
Yes.
So you could have 500 square feet of cultivated land, and then inclusive is a 5,000 square foot facility. Not mutually.
No, usually, the 500 square feet of growth would be within that 5,000 square feet.
Correct.
Right.
That can be an overlap. It
Right.
is an overlap, yeah.
Right.
And that pertains to caregivers, correct?
Yes, that's a huge caregivers.
Yeah.
Or if you do a canopy, which I don't believe we can do a canopy because we said it has to be inside, not be indoors. Is that correct? Isn't the canopy outdoors? That I don't know.
I don't believe it has to be indoors.
No, I don't think it does, Carol, just because you got the retail people growing it, I don't think anything small like that has to be, there's no any.
Whether inside-
We have to have a fence where nobody can see it and it's not accessible, but.
Whether inside or outside the residence, blah, blah, blah. And the 500, that's home use, that's not commercial use.
That is, it says caregivers.
I see it under regulation of home cultivation for medical and adult cannabis under I. Isn't,
I is caregivers.
isn't 5, which is above II, 5 is under I, which is I is regulation of home cultivation. Big I guess, I should have said that. Half I. Cap I, 5, double I, small.
No, this could be under J.
I wonder if, I'm half wondering, I won't say it as elegantly as you would, David, but, we're nitpicking this, we're flashbacking it, and I think we should move forward. What you're doing, Carol, is convincing me we should.
You're gonna present something and somebody's gonna slip through and we're gonna end up with a 5,000 square foot facility, and that's what I don't want.
Well, you're convincing me we should go with this. I can't see fly specking this anymore. I really can't. I've done it enough. It's just not,
I can tell you that point blank, I've done it.
yeah, no, I
I
get it.
don't like putting stuff in that's just not representative of what the town wanted.
Well, we don't know.
We don't know yet.
We don't know.
yet.
We've had quite a bit of input.
Yeah, but we're putting forth the most restrictive ordinance we think we can. There may be 100 people in town who don't want this and come in, and, you know, that might happen.
Maybe, but there's 1,300 people in town.
On the night, it matters how many there are on the night.
I've moderated, Mr. Blake has moderated pretty much every town meeting in the past 10 years, maybe.
Anyway, since Larry's talked, yep.
If there's 100 people at the town meeting, there's a celebration.
Everybody bring your friends.
So, yeah, I think
serious.
on average, town meeting, a special town meeting in particular, you're lucky to get more than a dozen.
30's a big turnout for a special.
Yeah.
Unless you got a real, heartburn issue like a gravel pit.
Fair enough. So Carol, I hear what you're saying, but, I think we should add, well, I'm just recommending this, but
Yep.
add church.
Yep.
To two, that list. Is there any place else we have to add it? Does anybody see any place else in the other, list of, I think that's the only place, but,
Add church to I-2 after treatment facility, comma. And I would suggest that if you don't like it, that you still support it, Carol, and come back and work on it some more. We will have more special town meetings, but we'll get something on the books that we can use.
And then when we get something on the books, what do?
Enforce it.
Okay, and somebody comes in and they say, okay, I've got an existing.
So,
well, the longer you wait to try to change it, the longer they have a chance to do it.
yeah, you aren't gonna have anything.
So start today.
Following your advice, we won't have anything.
So the other thing I suggest we do is in 3, this is, 3, it says limitation on size of existing medical use cannabis establishments.
Page,
So 5,000.
page 6.
So there's 2 issues there. The 2,000 versus 5,000. I don't know, does the board have a feeling on going from 2 to 5 or 5 to 2? And then the other thing I'd like to add is, a sentence that says, existing medical use cannabis establishments shall not be allowed to expand beyond the existing size of their use density.
And number 3 or 4?
3.
3.
So that would cover your issue there.
So
I
what
would
do you-
love to see that in there, because I'm just kinda.
I like that.
seeing
I like that.
What's your wording again?
Existing medical use cannabis establishments shall not be allowed to expand their existing size and density.
It sounds pretty tight.
Yeah.
That's the best sentence I've heard all night, David.
You're a winner.
I just,
Their existing, what?
Size and density.
Size of or density.
And I think, or, yeah, or is both, or is and or.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a motion for, do we have a motion on, no, we don't have a meeting yet, that's right, we're still in a public hearing. We have to go into a meeting in order to do anything by motions.
I think that's it, isn't it?
That's it.
Right. I know there's more, but that's it, as far as what we're willing to do.
There's a hand over here to sign.
Yeah, well, he's the chair, I'm
About,
Yes.
what qualifications does the caregiver have to have?
I don't know.
They get a license from the state.
Dale can.
absolutely zero. You fill out forms online and they do a background check, you send them a check and check
So
couple
you have no
bucks.
idea who these.
Oh, you gotta be a citizen or what, no, you have no idea who they are, no. That started way back when the medical came out. And there's a lot of people in town, I know, that drove for people that, you know, legitimately either use it or, you know, it's not like a money-making thing for them. So that's been going on for years, but there's no qualifications to be a caregiver at all.
But when they have to apply for a permit, they don't have to have any.
No, it's just, you just send your license from the state. Yeah. Simple process.
So if it's a medical, gonna be kind of a medical dispensing facility, you would think that there would have to be some sort of educational component for that person to become a caregiver.
You would think,
Yeah.
but that's not how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connie,
I just want to, going back to you, when you said we enforce it, how do we enforce it?
please, Connie, come on.
Okay,
We understand each other,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So are we all done with this? Have we beaten it to death? Okay? Okay. Land use ordinance. Anybody have any concerns, Norm?
First of all, front page, and it was the same on the town website. It says amended March 10, 2018. I assume we should have said amendments adopted at town meeting. And why that bothers me is right below it in the same format, amended August XX 2024. I hate to have stuff like this floating around in paper or on a website that somebody can say, oh yeah, that came into effect in August of 2024. This is kind of sloppy work, needs to be done different. We're talking about ordinance and law, and somebody I know down the road is gonna haul this out and say, here it is, and if we make changes, it's hard to convince them that we made changes and we look stupid. So, enough on that, get to something more important. Definitions, page 15, shoreland zone.
What? I'm slow, I'm not fast.
That's okay, that's okay.
Oh, wait,
Any chance?
before we get to that, let's stop at page 6. Let's look at church real quick.
Oh, yeah.
So what are we doing on church?
We are crossing out the on the second line, second to last word in the line. We're crossing out the.
Got it. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Norm.
Okay, back to page 15. Shoreland, definition, shoreland zone, land within 250 feet horizontal, and goes on in within, and I have a 75 and 100 feet horizontal distance of designated streams as written in the Town of Malden Shoreland Order. I assume that crossing out 75 and underlying 100 means that the intention of the planning board to increase the distance?
Yes.
Okay. A few minutes ago, I heard the chairman tell Carol that it's very difficult to take things away from people. What we're doing is taking another 25 feet out from that, away from people. Shoreland zone, in the shoreland zone, you cannot cut anything less than 4.5 inches DBH, diameter at breast height. Small trees, shrubs, and plants and weeds and stuff all have to stay, for good reason I'll get into in a minute. Trees, you may not take more than 40% of the trees above that in any, I believe, 10-year period. Basically, the shoreland zone, when it was initially started years ago, confiscated a lot of timber from a lot of people. However, I think it's not without good reason. All those little shrubs and the small trees that got nice roots, they stabilize the soil, hold it together when you have high water in the spring. That's a good thing. The tall trees shade the stream, shade the brook. That's a good thing because it keeps the water cooler than it would be, and trout and other aquatic life do a hell of a lot better in cooler water than they do in warm water. That's a good thing. Now, I got tying into this. One of the first parts of our comprehensive plan is a statement in there, the rights of property owners shall be maintained. There must be a clear and compelling reason to make things more restrictive. I'd like to know what the clear and compelling reason is why we're going from 75 to 100. State law, last I saw it, is 75 feet. There are some zealots in DEP that want to go to 100. I don't think it's necessary. Now, further to this thing, when 2 or 3, 4 years ago, when the assessing guy came around and looked at everybody's houses and stuff, I asked him, I said, what about land? He said, well, above and beyond the lot at which a house sits on, land is assessed at a given rate. And I said, well, what if I have an acre of perfectly flat land and loam that is so deep I can't find the bottom of it? And then right next to it, I got an acre and it's bony and ledgy and steep and you can't walk on it. And he said, land is land. And I said, well, what about a piece of land that's all boggy or it's a played out gravel pit? Nothing. Land is land. I said, okay. What about land that's in resource protection or shoreland zone? Now, the other aspects of land are physical. They're land-made. But a resource protection zone or a shoreland zone is man-made. I said, what about that? I said, is there a tax exemption for land that's in the shoreland zone or RP? No, land is land. Now, what we're doing here, with a stroke of a couple of little strokes of a typewriter, is taking the value of not just my land, but a lot of other people who own land in shoreland areas. And I think with the exception of one idiot over on Sebago Lake, on the other side of the lake, most of us are pretty cognizant. You don't tear up the banks and you don't do bad things and cause erosion and make things go to hell. What I would like to see tonight is us put this back to 75 feet where it belongs. I bought that land with money I made when I was working hourly wages. Nothing was given to me or anything like that, and I'm not alone. There's a whole lot of other people in town. I don't know how many miles of streams we have, but unless I can hear a clear and compelling reason, there's no reason to take the extra 25 feet. Don't worry, I'll take care of it, and I believe everybody else will too. You were gonna say something, Dave?
Yeah, my recollection of this change was, it's already 100 feet, and we have a shoreline zoning, ordinance that defines the scope of the shoreline zoning ordinance, and it's the 250, 100 in the ordinance since at least 2018. So I think my recollection of this change was, we were changing 75 to 100, and I hear your frustration with it. But I think all we're doing is making the ordinance, the land use ordinance, consistent with the existing shoreline ordinance.
I don't believe so. It was at a regular town meeting, this came up, and the 100 feet was turned down.
All I know is what's on the internet, because I believe everything.
I don't know why that got on there, but somebody put that on.
Let me just give you my perspective as a selectman and someone who hired a code enforcement officer. We've been told that we are to enforce the more restrictive code. And so, if the land use ordinance says 75, but the shoreline zoning ordinance says 100, then we have to use 100. In fact, we've done that to some people in town.
Well, again, we took this to town meeting, and among other things, it wasn't, I don't recall it was just that one
I
little
hate to say this,
It was
but
turned down.
You headed up the effort to update the shoreline zone ordinance to put it to 100.
No,
That's my recollection too.
That's right.
And Jim's nodding his head.
But.
And I don't remember, so I'm not gonna throw that.
No, I recall I was pretty darn adamant about 75.
But I think there was two things, I think, that was a bit amiss. It was in, I think, one or both of the ordinances, it said one number, and then
Yeah.
written out, said another number.
Yep.
And, I personally don't care, 75 or 100, but if it's gonna be 75, then we need to update the shoreline zoning ordinance to say 75 as well, so that it's consistent. Because I know West made somebody move their house, or the foundation for his house, and, that's the issue, is the consistency.
I thought this was all research back when that issue came up, because
In my earlier years, when I was code officer, we had a meeting here, and that DEP was here, and that 100 feet was changed down to 75 because there was a debate that 25-foot swampland would take quite a bit of tillable land away from the farmer. And that's how the 75 feet originally came about. But, doesn't really matter. We changed back to 100 feet, but that's where 75 feet came from.
Not many farmers now worried about it. I farm within 75 feet of a swamp, water, standing water.
So a stream here, now the definition of a stream is when two brooks merge and come into one, that becomes a stream. Above that is a brook, and brook is generally considered drainage from land, which could be year-round or it could be seasonal.
Yeah. Well, we will take that up in the planning board meeting which follows the public hearing.
And just to,
When's that? This next week?
In another,
probably next.
however, when you let us adjourn this
okay.
meeting.
No, don't get off me, Josiah.
Come on, Norm.
So just to put a sharp edge on it, the shoreline zoning ordinance that was passed 5/10/2018 has at least two references to the 100 foot. In the first part, it's the applicability, and it says it applies to the 250 or 100, depending on where it is. And it's clearly 100 in that reference, because it's 100. And then in the back, it talks about a shoreline zone, and again refers to the 250, 100. But there, it says, or within 75 feet, paren 100, end paren. So it's unclear on the second one whether it's 100 or 75. I'm not sure this answers any questions, I just want to support Norm a little bit, that it's not quite as clear as.
I'm not as foolish as I look.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, I'm pretty sure you are, but.
So let's move on. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
That'll shut me up for now, Josiah.
Okay. Does anybody else have things they want to talk about with the land use ordinance? Wes?
I wanna take some comments about tiny homes.
What page are we looking at?
I'm way on page, 68.
Okay, give us some time
Yeah?
to get there so we can follow you. I'm on page 68.
Okay, 1013A.
1013A, accessory dwelling units.
Down near the bottom, the two lines, says the tiny home meets the standards of 1014B, that is not a primary dwelling, and therefore considered an accessory dwelling. So you go over to 1014B, which is next page, and on 1014B, item 3, it says not exceed the dimension of allowable operational vehicle, on a public way, which means can't be more than 8 feet wide. I've always known a tiny home can be either that, a mobile unit, or can be a structure on a permanent foundation that the first floor does not exceed 400 square feet of living space. Now, living space is heated space, it doesn't include porches, decks, garages, sheds, or whatever. So, has to remain 400 feet or less. Doesn't include second floors or cellars.
So what would you like to see? What are you telling us?
Well, they're saying here on 1013 that tiny home can be an accessory dwelling as long as it's only 8 feet wide and is built like a loadable vehicle.
Yeah?
But it can be either a permanent structure or a loadable vehicle. So what hasn't been included is that it can be on a foundation, and only the 400 square foot is the requirement for the first level only of living space. And living space is heated space. It doesn't include decks, garages, sheds, whatever. And a second floor or a cellar is not included, is counted probably 400 square feet.
I'm reading 1014 and I'm not understanding what your problem is. I just don't understand it.
So he says,
It's a little,
he says that any tiny home pursuant to this section shall, so, defining what a tiny home has to be, so the first one is permitted on all, be permitted on all lawful lots. We're not worried about that.
Right.
Comply with some national standards about plumbing, propane, et cetera. We're not worried about that. The tiny home pursuant to this section shall not exceed the dimensions allowable for operation of recreational vehicles on a public way. And so what he's saying is, if the ordinance says that, then the tiny home can't be more than 8 feet wide.
Okay, so that's what we're saying.
And so Wes, why do you have a problem with it being only 8 feet wide?
what this doesn't include is what I became knowledgeable when the law first started to come in, is that tiny homes are either, home on wheels, which, falls in the category, can't be any wider than a roadable vehicle, 8 foot, and it can be a fixed unit on a foundation.
Okay, so you're
And
concerned.
400 square feet of living space, and living space is
Could
defined as
be-
heated area.
This could still be an 8-foot wide structure on a foundation. There's no.
Well, making a fixed unit, it can give you a little leeway of not being 8 feet wide, but you either have a 20 by 20.
Okay, so let's hold that thought for a second, so,
Yeah. And if
is
you put it on
there,
a foundation, you will never decide to put wheels underneath it, so it's 20 by 20 feet fine instead of 8 by 30. So are you concerned that there cannot be an ADU
that's wider than 8 feet?
Well, that's 10, I'll have to go to, I'm not on page now, I think that's, 1014B is saying, similar to a roadable vehicle, and a roadable vehicle is 8 feet wide.
Yeah, but so we're saying a tiny home is a roadable house, right? So that's how we're defining tiny home. But you're saying it could, you're concerned that an ADU cannot also be a fixed?
No, I'm not saying ADU, I'm saying tiny home. Earlier in the definitions, ADUs do include tiny home, but here is referring.
Hey, what I think, what you're saying is,
1014.
if it's on a
B.
permanent let me just clarify what I heard. That you're saying if it's on a permanent foundation, it doesn't have, it can be larger.
A little louder?
If it's on a permanent foundation, it can be wider than 8 feet.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
But I think under the ADU, you can have a ADU that's wider than 8 feet.
It'd still be a tiny home.
The section
Right,
earlier
tiny
on,
home-
in
tiny home-
definitions say ADUs can be anywhere from 190 feet to 750 square feet.
Okay, so we can put something 400 square feet as an ADU, right?
Yeah, but.
So, just give me a second.
Okay.
So if the ADU is 8 feet wide and roadable, it's called a tiny house, a tiny home.
Right.
But if it's on foundation, it can be wider.
Right, but it'd be something else.
But it would be something else.
It would not be a tiny home.
I think by definition, it could be wider.
Wait,
No, but we're saying it's not. We're saying it's not. That's, like,
We're trying to draw a distinction here.
But I don't see the problem, because if somebody has a 400 square foot dwelling unit, they can put it on a property. We just don't call it a tiny home. They can call it a tiny home, but we don't.
The definition of
Previous
tiny
page, on
home
page,
doesn't limit it to
page
8
is
feet.
saying in
Yeah,
1013A,
but this does, and it
We
doesn't
do
matter.
here, we're not
Tiny home
following
It doesn't
state
matter.
definitions.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, just so you're aware, it doesn't follow the state
Wes
definition.
is confused quite often.
Exactly. No, I'm with him, but I think it's a problem without, I think it's a problem without an impact.
it's not too much a problem, I think the reference is going back for it's a little vague, but you can plug it in, yeah.
So Bob had something he wanted to
So,
say.
I think what we put in here is what the state is defined as tiny homes. And so here's the regulation of tiny homes, this is, Title 30A, Section 4363, regulation of tiny homes. In accordance to this definition, tiny home has the same meaning as Title 29A, Section 101, subsection 80C. So I'm gonna go to that. So the definition. Get down to everything here. And that definition is in the motor vehicle section of the code. So you're already talking about something that's defined as a motor vehicle something or other. And, to the C's, A's, I know we went through this with Michaela in great detail, and, you get the right.
Because everything becomes a trailer.
Not the ADU.
Yeah, because it's big, just if you can go a little larger, something nicer,
But you can, it's just not called a tiny home.
I think we all look at the definition of tiny home.
I'm about to get a tiny home. Tiny home means a living space permanently constructed on a frame or chassis and designed to be used as a permanent living quarters that A, complies with the American National Standards Institute for Plumbing and whatnot. B, does not exceed 200 square feet in size, does not exceed any dimension allowed for operation on a public way under this title. And that's where that vehicles without motive power. Tiny home does not put a trailer, semi-trailer, camp, trailer, whatever. But that's the definition of tiny home by the state. And,
But that's how we know.
Yeah, it's a movable vehicle, yeah.
you don't have to put it on the
They want
road,
us to
but
have
that's.
tiny homes 8 feet wide because there are two manufacturers up in the district. And
It's
that's
called an
why,
ADU,
that's all.
it's a different word, it's a different word. It's called an ADU, and it's totally allowed if it's between 190 square feet and 750 square feet. It's called an ADU, not a tiny home. Tiny home is a movable home.
Well, you don't have to make it movable.
Well, no,
It
but-
has to be on a frame and it has to meet those definitions, so.
Doesn't it have to do with there being two manufacturers in Aroostook County
I think that's where it came from.
who make those and wanted them to be made legal throughout the state?
Does it say anything about being on a permanent foundation?
Right, right.
I mean, you could,
No,
it doesn't say you can't.
It could be bigger.
This just gives the size and, the dimensions, and it says it's supposed to be on a chain, on a frame.
Basically,
It has four wheels on it.
so it's basically a trailer.
yeah,
But, you know, what the thing is with tiny homes, is we get different exemptions with the code, by code.
You can run programs where people build tiny homes and, but that's not what the state of Maine has defined it as. It's a size that is trailable.
take care.
What else we got?
So, anything else on the land use ordinance? Dale,
Now, starting from page
can we be
67.
quiet, have some quiet, please?
Starting from page 67,
Wes, please.
the additional, dwelling units, the whole ADU thing, which is why we're having to rewrite our whole land use, is, how does that affect our growth ordinance that we have? Does anybody know, as far as like, how many people can apply for these, like, new ones?
Mike, do you have an answer to that? How does the, my,
On the growth side, you're allowed 15 a year.
Right.
And I think it probably, I think it'd be very difficult to try to figure it out, to give you something exact, because I don't know.
Bob had
I
something.
imagine it probably is gonna affect it.
You can read in the ordinance, I may be wrong, but state law says that an ADU does not count as a growth.
Okay, yeah, and that's kind of where I was getting at,
Does it say that in there?
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah.
which kind of makes our growth ordinance non-existent as well. I'm gonna go out on a real limb here, and suggest to the town that we reject the whole ADU, imposed by the state. They overthrew our local land use ordinance in the idea to cram houses in the outlying communities. I don't think it's right, somebody has to make a stand. There's no enforcement on it. I guess potential lawsuits would be the, ramifications down the road. But if we let it go through, what are the ramifications? You know, anybody can do anything. We can put 2 or 3 units on each lot. You know? We can, it ain't really designed for what I can see, for the mom and pop. It's designed so Portland and everybody can shove all their people out here, all subsidized by the state, and they can put on 3 or 4 dwelling units per lot. And then that's eventually gonna change Baldwin, like, not right off, but within 10 years, it will be unrecognizable. So I suggest, like I said, radical, in my opinion, I'm gonna vote no on it, but just to reject the whole state mandated ADU process.
So that's for another meeting. that'll be for the special town meeting where this gets brought up.
I'm just pointing out that so people think about it, maybe
Yep.
tell their friends, right,
Yep.
so I understand that.
Because this ordinance will be voted on as a whole with no amendments.
Yep.
That's the way land use ordinances are. It's everything or nothing. Norm?
I believe you can make a land use ordinance less restrictive, and amend at the town meeting. You can't make it more restrictive.
We'll check on that, but that was what the chairman that I entered this august body under told me years ago.
He was a fool.
I agree.
But he's gotten wicked smart and handsome.
We will check on that.
I don't recall, but
Okay.
there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm not recalling anymore.
I understand, Norm. Yeah, that's an argument, and I understand it. Do we have anybody else who wants to address the land use ordinance? Wes, you look like you're just vibrating there. You all right?
I'm all set.
Okay. So, with that, I'd like to close the public hearing. And I guess the first thing we'll bring up is, do we recommend the floodplain management ordinance as it is written, published? Do we recommend this to the selectmen to recommend to the town?
I think we do.
Was that a motion?
I'll move that the planning board, recommend the floodplain management ordinance, that was presented to the board tonight, for the special town meeting that's upcoming.
Second the motion.
Okay, so, motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this ordinance? All those in favor of recommending it? Okay, thank you. Okay, in the order in which we took them up, the cannabis ordinance. Do we want to amend some things here? The no expansion beyond current use. What was that wonderful sentence? Existing medical use of cannabis establishments shall not be allowed to expand their existing size or density. And do we want to attempt to take it down from 5,000 feet in number 3 to 2,000 feet? And there was church, page 5, line, number 2, I2, first sentence after facilities, comma, put in church. With those amendments, do I hear a motion?
What about the lot versus house? The lot versus town.
Yeah.
That needs, the lot needs to be changed to town.
Where was that? I'm sorry.
This number, page 5.
Page 5, number 1. Medical use cannabis establishment operated for commercial use is permitted per town.
So I know we're not in the discussion phase yet, but I don't support changing the 5 to 2, and I don't support changing the lot to town, because in the back of my head, I feel like we were supposed to have those, and without having Michaela bless it, I wouldn't be in favor of passing it, but, The other two I would be in favor of.
So I agree with you on I-1, changing lot to town, because I believe that's medical marijuana, and, medical marijuana is different from recreational.
My question, okay, my concern was that we wanted to limit dispensaries,
Yeah,
and that was one per town. Is that covered in this right? I didn't see it,
no, I didn't see it either.
and I think it should be. I think that was a big discussion we had along the way, that we only allow one dispensary in town.
I think the problem is that we somehow apply lot to a number of definitions, and we need something separate that says one per town for dispensaries.
I like that.
And the other types of medical marijuana applications can be per lot.
I think we gotta hit that sentence.
Per lot versus per town applies differently.
Well, wait a second, Matt, if we look at the whole thing, the whole paragraph, limitations on density of existing medical use cannabis establishments. So we're talking about what's already going on, which we know we can't find out. The state won't tell us. We don't know what this, whether, I just, you know,
I don't think the state not telling us about medical marijuana establishments is a problem, really, because if this ordinance is passed, they have 120 days where they have to present themselves to the planning board for a CUP.
so what we're doing would be, we are outlawing all but one medical use cannabis establishment.
They want to limit it to dispensary.
What?
They want to limit it
I
to
want to limit it
dispensary.
with dispensary.
Only one dispensary in town.
Okay, so then this,
You'd have to add a sentence.
this is, so it'd be, yes, it would be another sentence.
That's right.
Because this is, an establishment is, if I'm understanding this, and I'm less clear about what I understand as the night goes on. If I understand an establishment is a caregiver growing 500 square feet of plants, and down the street you got another caregiver growing another 500 square feet, neither one's a dispensary. Am I right?
In that case, you're
But,
right.
but they're both an existing medical use cannabis establishment.
That's all right.
Yeah, and so what this does is it says that I can't have 3 500 square foot establishments on my
Single.
house lot. And that makes sense, but to say per town,
All we need to do is take registered dispensary out of the sentence that has the lot in it, and then put this sentence in.
okay, where does this come from?
That is what's in our current land use ordinance.
So I have no problem with that being put in. Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Read it to us.
There shall be no more than one medical cannabis registered dispensary in the town of Baldwin.
That's what I want.
Yeah, and then we just make sure that the thing that has the lot descriptor doesn't include dispensary in it.
So we can pass this and then get a legal opinion on whether that's legal to go forward, and we'll change it back if it isn't.
I just have one question about that, if I may.
You can talk, but I can't listen because I'm trying to write and I can't do two or three things at a time.
So if I understand correctly what you just said, just presented to you, is that there can only be one medical dispenser, but in the
Correct.
town.
Yes,
But that doesn't mean that there can't be other dispensaries that are non-medical.
correct.
So there could be 5 dispensaries, there could be 5 businesses in town, only one medical dispensary,
I think we've
but
eliminated it.
others recreational.
Yeah, I think we've eliminated, that in other ways in here.
Okay.
Slowly crowding it out.
Okay.
So there's 1, 2, I'm just trying to see, 3, 4 different amendments to this that have been suggested tonight. Yep. So the changes are on page 5. I-1, just before I-1, I am putting, there shall be no more than one medical cannabis registered dispensary in the town of Baldwin. Number 2, second line after facility, comma, put in church. And page 6, we are changing, in number 3, we are changing 5,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet. Thank you. Person who wrote on here can't read his writing. And putting in the sentence at the end of number 3, existing medical use cannabis establishments shall not be allowed to expand their existing size or density. So I would ask for the motion to include those amendments, but also to say that if we find that any of those amendments are not within state law, that we then recommend this ordinance without those amendments, so that we can move forward.
Make a motion that we change the draft to include those amendments, as long as they prove to be within state law. Yes.
And we recommend the ordinance without
The
those
ordinance with those amendments if they pass the state law test.
But we still recommend the ordinance, if they don't pass this, we just take them out.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Second motion.
We have a second.
All right.
Do we have any further discussion?
Yeah, I mean, it's too quick for me, but I'm in the outvoted, so I feel comfortable going forward.
Okay, good, okay. All those in favor? And those opposed? Okay. Land use ordinance. Yeah, please.
So I move we recommend the ordinance that was presented to us with the following changes. First page, adding adopted at town meeting, change August to September, and insert the date when it's approved, if it's approved. On page 6, definition of church, delete the last "the" in the last sentence of the definition prior to conduct.
Oh, the 7,500 foot issue.
What's your comment? Wanna make it 75?
I don't care, whatever we do, we're gonna get into trouble with somebody.
Well, why do we have to define it here? Can we just say, as defined in the town of Baldwin shoreline zoning ordinance?
I like that.
Like, why do we have to put the number in there? I'm curious, I mean,
For convenience of the poor people who have to read this and obey the law.
State is requiring 75 feet, is that correct?
Well, our shoreline zoning ordinance requires 100.
I know, what does the state require?
Well, I don't know what the state requires.
what about, instead of saying as written in the town of Baldwin shoreline zoning ordinance, say, or as written in the town of Baldwin shoreline zoning ordinance, whichever is stricter. Lisa, Matt, did that do it?
Well, I think both ordinances, every ordinance we have says that in the evidence of a conflict, this ordinance takes precedence. So, it says that in the floodplain ordinance. So I think we have to determine in terms of definitions and the contents of the ordinance, which has precedence, shoreline zoning or land use? We should pick one of them. I would think that the land use has, that is our main ordinance. So that should really, have the priority in terms of, any conflicts, the land use ordinance rules.
This is a tough one, because if Norm's right, we didn't pass it to 100, this shouldn't be 100. But if he's wrong, it should be 100. I don't know if we can answer that question.
It's going to a town meeting, so it is what comes out of the other end of the town meeting.
I like
So,
the state, go ahead.
does that mean that if I'm 100 feet now and you changed it to 75, I could put in an additional one?
Yeah? Yeah?
Well, under this, but the shoreline zoning ordinance says no. So, you'd probably get the most restrictive, I would think.
Most restrictive would apply.
I'd like what you suggested, not put any number and just refer back to shoreline zoning.
Yeah, but I kinda agree with Matt too, like, we should put a number in there, like, I don't know. I just wish we knew the answer to the 75.
Well, I would rather go with the 75 feet.
Well, why don't we put the 75 feet in, and if the shoreline zoning ordinance is in fact 100, that should apply.
That's most restrictive.
Right.
So 75 in the land use ordinance, and that's what, rules even if the shoreline zoning says 100.
Well, it would be the most restrictive, the most
Which would be
restrictive
100.
would be 100,
The 100 would.
because they'd be farther away,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, I follow.
yeah.
I have a suggestion. Put 75 in there, just keep the movement on updating the shoreline zoning ordinance. Yep. And put 75 in there too.
Okay, let's put 75 in here.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Because there's another amendment that's never been, that was passed but never actually published.
Okay. You can enlighten us another time on that. So my motion, in addition to the
Which
first.
means that Norm was right all along.
Let's put in 100.
You haven't talked to Carol lately.
So the third element of my motion would be to, retain the existing 75 feet, definition of shoreline zone.
I think that was, oh, wait, what have we got? No? That's it?
That was it.
That was it?
Period.
And Mike seconded,
Second that motion, sure.
and is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
There you go.
Great, thank you. Now, we're done with these ordinances for tonight. What we have is some housekeeping we have to do. We gave, Mr. White 2 conditional use permits back in May, on May 9th, and on May 23rd. He never received his signed copy of the conditional use permit on either one of the 2. And, our secretary at the time did a wonderful job in the minutes, of the meeting to document everything that would go into the conditional use permit, which I have here, copies of both from the minutes as published on the web. And what we need to do is determine if this is what we want, this is true, not this is what we want. We gave this to him. I'm trying to sort this through to have each thing go in the proper place. So we have TW Enterprises, is that TW Enterprises? The other is Flying Squirrel.
It's like TW Enterprises.
Okay, and then yeah, that's TW. And this is Flying Squirrel.
I'm sorry, I'm with you, She's from Seattle. I'm from Seattle. She's from Seattle.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate it very much. Even you, Norm.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mary.
We'll see you
Thanks
at
for
town
coming.
meeting.
You just tell us where to try. I trust you.
Pleasure.
Looks nice down there right now. All landscape, nothing in there. They still have a Canterbury sign up, so you guys.
I did a sign that.
They're gonna tear that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to come sign, we don't have to
Yes. Yeah. Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
What's happening?
Not much.
So, who's signed?
I haven't seen a picture of the floodplain district yet.
Okay.
No?
No, did you?
No.
I wish I had a picture of it.
Is that all we need to do?
The only other thing is we need to have somebody motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Great.
To adjourn.
Second, Paul.
All those in favor?